So the breed of chicken that we're raising here is a Cornish cross. So it's a cross between two different breeds that grow extremely fast, and they put on a very large amount of breast meat, because that's what the consumer wants. That's what we're used to getting in the grocery store. Typically these are grown in huge warehouses or barns, and the chickens never get to see sunlight, green grass, insects, fresh air. So my goal is to raise them out here on pasture. When in order to do that, you still have to protect them from predators, because they're just not smart enough to free range on their own if you're not somehow protecting them. So there are all different types of what are called chicken tractors that get moved daily, and there's nothing on the bottom, so they're picking at the grass, insects, worms, whatever they can find. And I move this daily, and at this stage multiple times a day, because they are producing a lot of manure. They're consuming a lot of the grass, and I want to keep them as clean as possible, so I'm constantly moving them. So just this morning I looked online at what chicken, just a whole chicken, is selling for in grocery stores and, you know, the big Walmart, and it's priced at $1 per pound. I can't compete with that. I'm having to charge $3 to $3.50 a pound. Now the reason they can charge that is because they're buying chickens not 50 at a time, but 50,000 at a time, 100,000, 200,000 at a time. They're not buying 50-pound bags of feed like I'm buying, but they're buying feed by the truckloads or the train loads. So that scale really brings the cost of feed and the birds down. There's just no way I can compete with that. My competitive advantage that I have is the health of the birds. I'm not feeding any antibiotics. I'm not feeding any growth hormones. And my customers know that these birds are living in fresh air, not breathing in the ammonia and all of the toxins that are created from the manure in these big warehouses. They're getting fresh grass. That's nothing that you're going to be able to find in a grocery store bird. Insects. So their diet is varied. Also, the life of the bird. I have to protect them with the shelter, but they are out here and they're getting to enjoy nature as much as possible. So that is not something that happens in a confinement operation. So those are my competitive advantages. My customer is a niche customer that wants a healthy bird, a bird that has been treated humanely, and that has had a varied diet. So what I feed the bird, some of it is coming from the forage. So if you see them in here, they are picking at the grass. They will eat all of whatever green grass or forage is on the ground. They're also eating insects and seeds. Now, I do provide them with a feed. Usually I just buy like a chick starter grower. That's a pelleted form that I get from the feed store. This year I've actually started mixing my own feed, so I'm getting cracked corn, soybean meal, and adding some mineral to it, just as an experiment. And that does cut costs down a little bit, not a whole lot, but that way I'm kind of controlling a little bit more. I know what's going into it. These birds eat a lot. They grow fast and they eat a lot. In fact, I have to restrict their feed at night because they will grow so fast and eat so much that their weight outpaces the strength of their legs. I mean, that's part of these birds. That's the way they're designed to grow fast. So I feed them at 7 in the morning, and if there's any feed left in their trough, I'll remove it at 7 at night and give them 12 hours of no feed. And they have water all the time. I do not feed grit. I assume they're picking up little pebbles and things on the ground. However, that is something I'd like to experiment with, do a controlled, and see if the feed goes down with the grit. So that is something I should try. I've never done it. It's kind of one more input that I haven't done, but I should experiment with that. So I buy the chicks from a hatchery. Well Hatchery is who I typically use. I think it's up in Iowa and New Mexico. So these are the same, I believe these are the same hatcheries that supply the chickens to these big warehouse, like Tyson Foods, and the contractors that buy the birds to grow up for the big companies. They come in the mail, so usually I'll get 40 or 50 at a time. And they come in the mail in a box. And the post office will call me early in the morning, at 4 in the morning, and say, we've got chicks for you to come pick up. And they're a day old, 2 days old. And so I'll go to the post office, pick up my box of chirping chicks, and drive them home. And then for 3 weeks, as they're, just little puffballs, they'll stay in a brooder. So that's completely protected from the wind, from the cold, from the heat, from predators. And again, they're fed their ration in there for 3 weeks. That gets them up to a point where they have feathers. They're adapted to our environment here. They've kind of got a boost. They're ready to, before they're ready to come out here on pasture. They're real active birds at that point. They're running around, real feisty. Once I bring them out here, the birds learn the routine. So when I first start pulling this, the first time they don't know what I'm doing, and they'll all get backed up because I'm pulling the pin. They're kind of scared by me, so they all go to the back. So a lot of times I'll have my daughter or son or someone get to the back and kind of clap their hands, and it kind of encourages them to come forward. That takes about a week, and then they get used to the process. And if I were to move them right now, they know when this thing gets moved, it's fresh grass. So they're right here at the front, and they're excited to come get some new grass or clover or whatever green we have here. The older they get, they just kind of start slowing down, and you can see a lot of them are just sitting there. And I think that's been bred into them with the idea that they don't want the chicken to be burning any more energy than they have to, and they're just kind of just sitting there eating and putting on weight. But you can see they are active. They are moving around. These are 8 weeks old. So it goes from little puffball, chick, to a processed 4 to 5 pound bird in 8 weeks. It's pretty incredible. And that's what that crossing, it's that Cornish cross that they figured, the breeders have figured out how to create this bird to grow that fast. I don't know. Again, it's trade-off. Is that natural? Is it, is that healthy for the bird? I don't know. I know that it produces meat quickly. It's what the customers want. There are other breeds out there of birds that a lot of homesteaders or small-scale poultry operators are trying to raise that are not the Cornish cross, that grow a little slower, a little more natural, and can forage a little better. I have not been able to figure out how to do that without just charging so much money that it prices me out of the market. I'm interested in it, but it's just not something I'm able to do at the moment. So I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and it started off just friends, neighbors, people that I knew that were interested in kind of the local food movement, people wanting clean food, not factory raised food. And so I reached out to them and kind of started a small email list, and then it just grew from there. They would have friends that would also want this, so they would get added to the email list, and then started using social media, so using Facebook, Instagram, And by doing that, again, just more people are sharing it. So it's just kind of a grassroots, has grown slowly. I've not really done any advertising. It's just really been word of mouth. Now I am not, this is not my sole enterprise. It's almost an entry point for me, for a customer to buy a smaller product instead of maybe a full lamb, a full pig, or half a pig, or half beef, something like that. That's a huge purchase. But these are smaller. If, you know, a lot of people don't have the big freezers, but they can buy a couple of chickens, 3 or 4 chickens, and that will fit into their freezer at their house. So my wife and I always wanted to live out in the country, just the idea of it, but I had no intention of farming or raising animals. While my wife was in school, I read The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan and got really turned on to the farming practices of a farmer called Joel Salatin out in Virginia. And Joel has tried to raise everything on pasture and also build structures that are scalable. So you're not having to build a huge barn to house these things, but you could build smaller structures that aren't going to have a huge upfront investment. But if you wanted to grow, you can build more of them and scale up without, again, going into massive debt or any debt, really. I was just really intrigued by his farming concepts and the way that he was farming. And so I read all of Joel's books. He's published a number of books. And then I read books that he referenced and got into regenerative agricultural practices that are trying to heal the land with animals. Looking at management systems like holistic management and permaculture. What can we use animals? How can we use animals to heal the land, improve the land, and not just use the animal and extract from the land? So that really got me interested in production models with these animals that are, I don't know, you call them alternative or new or regenerative. There's all these, you know, different labels you can put on it, but I just find it fascinating to see how far we can push it. What can we do with animals to improve instead of extract from the environment? So yes, I had never processed a chicken before. So while I'm reading these books, you know, there's descriptions in there about, okay, well, this is how you process a chicken and how you pluck a chicken, scald a chicken, but really the bulk of the way that I learned how to do this was from videos on YouTube and just stuff that was being published on blogs and things like that. It was something that I kind of thought up that, again, was not nearly as expensive, just using traffic cones.
I think the blood can be used as a organic soil amendment too.
Yeah, it should, because it's, I mean, you think about blood meal that you sell, it's
Yeah. You spray it while you...
Yeah.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay, that's good for now, Edwin.
So we've let the birds start to cool down in the water after we pluck them. So here we're going to basically eviscerate. We need to get rid of all of the insides, the neck, or the head, and the feet. So the first thing I do is I use the edge of my cutting board and I just cut the head off, or pull it off. With the feet, I'm going to look right here for the joint. If I can go right on that joint, it'll come right off, and you're not going to dull your knife that way. Now you can save these. And in fact, Bailey, if you can hand me that other, I will save these, because what we'll do is create a chicken broth and turn it into dog food. We can make that chicken broth and then put rice in there, and the rice will absorb all of the broth, and we can feed that to the dogs. Okay, so we've got the feet off. Right on the back of the tail here, this little nub is an oil gland. So I kind of push down on that to tighten it up. Now I take that off. Okay. Now from here, I'm gonna take this little bit of skin and just barely cut it. I'm just wanting to break the skin, and I kind of will pull it open. So there's the esophagus and what's called the craw. And the esophagus is pretty easy to find. It's kind of textured. It's like a windpipe, and you can kind of see it right there. Okay? That's easy to find. Now, the craw is not. It's right here, but it really bleeds in, or blends into the skin. You've got to get your thumb up under it and pull it away from the skin like that. And it's not easy to do, but once you kind of get a feel for it, it becomes easier. The craw is where all the feed, grass, it'll build up in this pocket right here and then slowly go down into the chicken to be processed. So they can eat a whole bunch and then kind of sit around and digest it over time. Okay, but I've got to pull that craw and the esophagus away from the breast meat right here. Kind of loosen it up, because what's going to happen is when I eviscerate, the craw and the esophagus is going to slide through the bird, but I need to detach it. So that's what I'm doing right here, is kind of going through with my thumb and finger and kind of pulling it away like that. Okay, so there it is in the esophagus. They're kind of sitting loose. Okay, now I'm going to come to the back side of the bird. Need the water as well. So at this point, if there is any poop that does come back out, we want to spray it again, kind of clean everything off of our board. Okay, right above the vent, again, I'm going to make a little cut, but I just want to cut the skin, and the rest of it, I'm going to tear. So I'm going to kind of open that up. Oops. Is that okay? May have got that on the, okay. Okay, and then from here, I'm going to use, my hands are a little bit, not huge, but they're a little bit bigger. I usually use about 3 fingers to kind of go up in there. What I'm doing is ripping all of the intestines away from the skin of the breast meat here, the breastplate. So I kind of go in slowly and just kind of do a circular motion like this to pull that out. And I kind of doing it slowly, and then I'm going to go up underneath and do the same thing. I'm detaching it all from the bones. Okay, and then I've kind of got my fingers in a claw like this, and I'm going to pull back, and now that esophagus right there. See, there's the craw, and then now the esophagus broke off, but I can get that. It's right here. Okay, so that's all out. The only thing that's attached now is the intestines to the vent. So I'm going to actually cut down on each side of this and around that vent and then completely pull it out. Okay? Now, if I want to from here, I like to save the gizzards. I grew up eating these. My granny would fry them for us. So what I'm going to do is just put those in a bucket over there for now, and I'll clean those out in a little bit. The rest of this I'm just throwing away. I don't save the livers. I just don't know enough people that want them, and it's just not worth the time. Okay, and there's another tool here that will remove the lungs. Sometimes the lungs will just come out, but that kind of has that scraper. Okay. I'm going to get water up in there and just try to clean everything out. I'm going to look again. And then I'll even bring the bird and just once more spray it down and then put it in the water. And that's it.